Hello, welcome to my basement once again. My name is Bill Hennessy. I'm the pastor of North Presbyterian Church in Williamsville, New York. And during this time of isolation that we've been experiencing because of the pandemic, I've been offering a little Bible study each day based on the daily lectionary readings. We're into June. Today is June 4th, 2020. And things are beginning to open up again. So I'm probably going to start going into my office next week on a daily basis. So these offerings will be a little less frequent. I think I'm going to limit them to Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. On Tuesdays, I'm leading a Bible study on Zoom, which you're welcome to be a part of. It's a live Bible study that we do together. It's not recorded or anything. It's just a chance for folks in the congregation to share insights on Scripture together. But it does take some time and some preparation, and so on Tuesdays I'm going to give up doing this other piece. And on Fridays, normally that is my day off, and so I'm going to try and start to honor that. I'm getting a little pressure from home that it seems like I'm working every day, but so I want to try and limit this a little bit. But today, of course, is Thursday, so I invite you to hear this passage from the daily lectionary reading. This is from the Gospel of Matthew, which we've been following for a little while now. This is Matthew chapter 14, verses 13 through 21. Now, when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them, and cured their sick. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now late. Send the crowds away, so that they may go into the village and buy food for themselves." Jesus said to them, "They need not go away. You give them something to eat." They replied, "We have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish." And he said, "Bring them here to me." Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And all ate and were filled. And they took up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. Well, this is a well-known passage from the Gospels, the feeding of the 5,000. It starts in an interesting place. This passage didn't give any description of what Jesus had heard, and what Jesus is responding to when he goes away to a deserted place to pray is the news of the death of John the Baptist. So this is a moment when Jesus is grieving. He hears this news and he decides he needs to be alone for a while. But the crowds won't let him. They follow him. So he goes out into a boat and across the lake, and when he gets out, the people have already sort of gone ahead of him, meeting him at the shore. And there are so many. And he is so filled with grief. And yet, he has compassion. He can't help himself. This is a quality of Jesus' personality that is referred to often in the Gospels, but we don't really seem to pay much attention to it. He is always moved by compassion. The word in Greek literally means to have his insides turned. It really means visceral. His stomach turns when he sees them. It hits him in the gut when he sees people in need. We've all experienced that. I think I certainly have. Have you ever seen the image of a child in a hospital starving? Even though you've never seen that child before and don't know his or her name and will never ever know that person, your stomach sort of tightens up when you see that kind of sadness, that kind of suffering. That's how Jesus felt every time he came across the people in need. And so he does what he can. He ministers to them, he teaches them, he heals them. He gives them the care they're seeking. And so he does that all day long. And the disciples start to get nervous, as disciples do. Start to get nervous, wondering, well, these people are going to start to get hungry, and we don't have anything to give them. Why don't you send them off? Get them out of here. I wonder, I know that in other versions of this story, I think that they actually say that this crowd is going to get angry. You've heard of hangry, and that anger that comes with hunger. That's what they're afraid of. You see, the disciples are nervous when they see all these people clamoring. It makes them a little touchy. But Jesus, instead, tells them to take care of them and themselves. We're not sending these people away. I want you to feed them. That's an indication to me. I don't think Jesus is just playing with his disciples. I think it's an indication that Jesus has confidence in these people of their ability to carry out his ministry, just as he has confidence in us to carry out the ministry we need to in the midst of the needs around us. But of course, all they can see are their limitations. They can't see their possibilities. And so they come back with the scarcity that they live from instead of the abundance that he represents. And this story is their learning of that abundance, of experiencing it firsthand. It's a powerful story. We tended to try and normalize it somehow. That by sharing of what they had, they sort of inspired the crowd to share what they had. But maybe that's, if we want to normalize it, I suppose that's the way to do it. But it seems to me that there's something else at work here. This is a symbolic story. It's a story of the sort of lived metaphor of abundance that Jesus brings. And that abundance occurs because when we're in his presence, we are part of the kingdom. And if we can live in that presence continually, we can experience that kind of abundance. And it's not abundance for its own sake. It's not abundance for our own acquisition. It's abundance of generosity. It's abundance of justice, abundance of equity, of compassion. That's what Jesus is helping his disciples to experience, and what this crowd discovers. That when we work and move and embrace God's kingdom in our midst, then there's no limit to what we can do. There's no limit to the generosity we can express, to the justice we can bring, to the compassion that we can feel. That's what this story is about. It's about this deep well of giving that exists within each of us, and that Jesus is able to bring to the surface to help us find. It's a powerful story. It's a reason why this story, of all the miracles that Jesus performs, this is the only one that we find in all four Gospels. All four Gospels have some version of this feeding story, which suggests that there's something more going on here than meets the eye. It's a worthwhile one to ponder. How do we experience that kind of abundance in our lives, and how do we help others to experience that in their lives? How can the church become the source of feeding for those in need? How can we approach the world with the embrace of abundance and lead them away from this trap of scarcity in which so many of us find ourselves? So friends, I invite you to look at that story more closely and maybe compare it to the other versions that exist in the Gospels. It is a worthwhile story, and one that is more than meets the eye. So enjoy that, and I hope your day is a good one. It is a beautiful, warm day today, and I hope you are able to take some time and enjoy the beauty of the world around you, the people around you, and continue to stay safe and to be healthy, and look out for one another. And I will be with you again on Monday. Friends, be well.